activity in the system. And so for those that aren't, I'll give a quick overview, although it's not an easy subject to give an overview. And I also should say a trigger warning. Okay, we've got a delay. We'll just do some tech stuff here. Yeah, for anybody who's not familiar with the subject, with the phrase trigger warning, if you are a survivor of child sexual abuse, or ritual sexual abuse, then some of this subject matter could, cause anxiety, upset, PTSD. Just take care of yourself and be responsible for how you listen. And if you find yourself what we would call triggered, take a break, do whatever you need to do just to stay well. So having said that, for those that aren't aware, and it seems that people are aware of this globally, it's been phenomenal the way people have just reached out and found something within themselves to say, this is not okay with me, and in my way I'm committed to doing what I can to not just sit in my armchair and say it's not okay, to actually say, what can I do? So last September, Ella Draper and her partner went through the proper channels, reported to the police very, very serious disclosures that Ella's children had made. They were very thorough and impeccable with gathering the evidence. The children disclosed, and they disclosed on video, and then they disclosed to a policeman family member, and then as much as they could do as a responsible mother and stepfather to document every detail was done. Not trying to be professional, not trying to say we're professional social workers or we're professional police interviewers, just saying we're a mother and a stepfather who are absolutely horrified and appalled and want to do everything we can to responsibly handle this. And it didn't go so well. In fact, what happened was a few days after Ella and Abraham went to the police, I think within days the children were removed from their care, and within 6 days they had retracted. So the videos were online. They went online inadvertently some months later, and some months later, when it became very clear that not only was Reason not, despite their best efforts to present everything superbly, in detail, documented, not only was it not being handled responsibly, there was a very clear indication that this was going to be covered up, and it was going to follow a certain pattern which is very familiar to survivors and people that have been the victims of cover-ups, which was that what you have is the mother is character assassinated, usually portrayed as mentally unwell or bearing a grudge or a bitter ex-wife or so on. Any alternative person will be framed, and then the children will be taken into care and eventually given back to the abusing parent or whoever was originally accused. This is the way, in the past, it's gone. And so the videos were released in February of this year. 19 absolutely traumatizing videos of 2 young children, I think they were 8 and 9 at the time, talking in great detail about being the victims of a satanic ritual abuse cult, being victims of not just sexual abuse at the hands of their alleged abuse at the hands of their father, but also a paedophile ring. And even paedophile is a bit of a gentle word for that, because this is not just paedophilia, this is sodomizing, raping, drugging, sometimes murdering, certainly torturing, psychological torture, incitement to brutalizing each other, the siblings, secrecy. It was huge. It was huge. It involved schools, and I could just hang allegedly on all of this. It involved schools, social services, police, judiciary. It was an absolute full-blown, functioning paedophile ring. And there's the connection again. So it's a little technical glitch, and we'll try and connect again. Sorry about that, guys, but we're still online audio. So let's go for it again. This is the first time that our guest has done a Skype interview, and anybody that works on Skype knows that you can be actually subject to interference. It's not always random. But when in doubt, we don't get paranoid. So let's try again. Can we do a little music break while we just re-establish this Skype connection? Is that possible? Thanks. There we go. Okay, hi.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Did something happen on your end?
I don't know, it froze.
Okay, well, we'll bear with it. So, I'm sure we'll get into this in more detail, but I was just trying to give an overview, and it's almost impossible to put it in a box, but suffice to say that millions of people have viewed the videos, and certainly for survivors would be traumatized for a week afterwards. It was so profound and so heart-wrenching, and yet also, again, anybody who knows anything about children disclosing, whether it's because you're a survivor or a professional, you know, whether you, if you're familiar with working with wounded children, I would challenge anybody to say that they were making it up. It was, I would stake my life on that those children were telling the truth. And I have staked my life on that, because along with everybody else, you know, very active in this, you know, we get threats and intimidations, but there's certain things that are worth it. So that's enough of an overview for now, and we will, you know, there's a chat room, live questions can be sent in. I would encourage people to either link up with the Hampstead Research blog or check out Whistleblower Kids, Sabine McNeil's blog, or you can virtually find it on any social media platform. You can find it on YouTube. It's absolutely out there for anybody that wants to know. And all I can say is that this is not a hoax, and this is definitely worthy of your attention. So to everybody that's listening, the reason we're broadcasting so late with our first interview is because our first guest is in America, and we just had to fix the timelines. So the person that we're going to be talking to is Robbie, pseudonym Pope Fraize, title Reverend of a Church of Satanism, and the little bit that Robbie's told us is that he is very, very familiar with families and groups and bloodlines and so on where satanic ritual abuse is practiced, but chose himself to break away from that, which obviously is to be saluted. So we're looking forward to learning the inside track on what is possibly going on, could be going on, likely going on, and also you know, knowledge is power. We don't want to shoot the breeze. We want this, however long time we spend, to make a difference. We want these children released and free, and we want Ella and Abraham free to come back and come and go as with Sabine, and we want this cover-up to stop. So with that in mind, would you like to introduce yourself, Robbie, and tell people a little bit about why you are on the same platform and what you can teach anybody and everybody, including yourself, who's committed to getting Gabriel and Lisa free?
Well, my name is Reverend Dr. Robert Fraize. I live in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and I've been a Satanist probably for about 25 years. This case ended up on my Twitter feed, and now I've been reading and researching more and more into it, and I believe, honestly, that there is some kind of ritualistic abuse going on. I don't like to see anybody being abused. I don't really consider these crimes satanic per se, but I can understand why people could call it satanic. But yes, but the bottom line is there is abuse going on, and I believe this. I believe what the children are saying.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good to know, and I think there's many people, most people, in my opinion. To me, it defies. It can only be sinister and cover up. For anybody that does any kind of research into this, to say it's a hoax and it's all a load of rubbish, that's not naivety. That's cover up, in my opinion. So one of our goals is for people that have only touched on the surface and may have thought, oh, it was a hoax, that's all right then, to let them know absolutely not, and please take a second look. So can you tell us a little bit, you talked, when we were communicating, can you talk to us a little bit about the bloodline thing and about the ritual? We don't, I'm not attached to calling it satanic, but I think we're all agreed there's ritual abuse, it's not just sodomizing.
Yeah,
can you talk to us a little bit about what you know?
Right, well, there's many bloodlines, they say there's 13, but there's many bloodlines that control this world. And this all started back in Babylon and Sumer, when, so that basically, hold on a second. Yes, so those bloodlines control the world. They come from Sumer and Babylon, and there's cults that are branched off from these bloodlines. And these bloodlines are all related, obviously, and they're in control of banks, businesses, the media, and all those sorts of things. Yeah,
so without having people do that automatic switch that says, oh, conspiracy theorists, so on and so forth, I think what you're referring to is sometimes referred to as the Illuminati and the 13 families, right, and then the 100 families and so on. And are you happy to share your name and where you were in that whole paradigm before you separated yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Or distanced yourself?
My family, correct. My family is actually, the Hutchinson name is actually connected to the bloodline, and which is related to George Bush, and goes all the way back to the Sumerian creators.
Okay.
This makes me a distant relative of many of these higher-ups.
Okay.
And, basically, it's all like, any kind of communication is telepathic, kind of, like a psychic communication in a way. It's hard, really, for people that haven't experienced it to understand it or to accept it. I mean, people are going to say it's crazy, but yeah, I know what I've experienced.
Okay.
And many people within the family, that's how they communicate with each other. Like, through feelings, and it's weird. It's a strange thing.
I understand that. I understand that. So something I'm familiar with is that when children are in generational cults, then they are prepared and manipulated and from birth, and the first 6-7 years being crucial to change the brain pathways, to make them susceptible to complying and reproducing the ritual abuse from generation to generation. So I'm familiar with that, and what I'd like to ask is, were you born into a generational where there was SRA going on from generation to generation? Was that something you were born into and suffered from?
My family was not involved in that. I believe it's a few generations removed.
Okay.
But it's imprinted in DNA. Our DNA holds this energy.
Yeah, there's a
and this communication.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you become? Because the reason I want to understand what you had to teach is for you to give us insight on what's going on in Hampstead. So, for instance, we know if we believe the children's testimonies to be true, and no coaching mother or allegedly bullying stepfather could coach those children to memorise and corroborate and communicate the level of detail and the length of content if those children were not speaking truth, in my opinion. So if we take what the children have said to be true, and you've been following the case, so say we have the priest, the Catholic priest, we have the school,
right.
We have the social services, we have members of the judiciary, we have random people, we have parents and teachers, and we have rituals which the children describe, and the church being one of the sites for. So can you say, based on what we know to date, what would you assess to be going on?
It is a form of the occult.
Okay.
There's occult rituals going on.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these, from what I understand and have researched, I believe there's things going on under the ground of the church.
Tunnels, yeah, and
tunnels.
Caves, as in the Hellfire Club and so on.
Yes, these things have been going on in that section for a very, very long time.
Okay.
And they haven't stopped.
Okay. Good.
And this goes all the way back to the beginning of the royal family.
Yeah.
And it's continuous. And,
yeah,
recently more evidence has come up
I get it.
People.
But why do you think this has reared its head so overtly in London, in Hampstead, and not just... This is where the SRA has reared its head and the organised, but we've also had, I don't know how much of the UK side of things you're aware of, but we've had Rotherham, we've had Oxford, we've got Nottingham ongoingly being uncovered, we've got the Westminster paedophile rings. So it's not just Hampstead, but Hampstead in terms of the ritual abuse and the brazen, sort of almost fearless, we're doing this and you can't touch us, and we don't care how much proof piles up, we're one step ahead. There's a kind of a to me it's like when a serial killer is in his end game and he knows he's soon to be caught, he gets reckless. So there's a kind of a recklessness to the brazenness. It's not very well hidden, and it's almost as if it's like a husband committing adultery that wants to be caught. There's almost a sort of, to me, there's a sort of a Harry element to it, where it's like, yeah, and what are you going to do? That kind of thing. What's your hit on that?
Because they don't care, because they control everything. Well, so they can do things basically.
Well, we have to be, I'm very clear on how powerful words are. So they may believe they control everything, and they may believe that they're so embedded in society that we're powerless. But actually, I believe that we are not powerless. I believe that we need to watch our words and our actions. And I believe that greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. You can't, no amount of money, no amount of power can overthrow a power greater than. So I wouldn't say they rule the world. I do know they believe they do.
Right, they believe that they can do whatever
that's
they want.
accurate. That's accurate. So there was something else you said, very interesting, in talking or messaging back and forth. You said that when it's this brazen and overt, and also if you throw in some false flags and some weather manipulation, that's you talk about what you think that is a precursor, or what do you interpret that as?
When these kind of rituals and these things are done on a large scale, as allegedly as what's going on, like in the hundreds, babies supposedly being killed. These things are being done to put energy into something bigger.
Okay.
These events could be used to take the energy to create earthquakes, big storms, and things of that nature, which is to cut down the population.
Okay.
These people want to take a lot of people out.
Okay, so yeah, I think the way you phrased it was something like that. If these little things are coming together, so you've got, because interestingly in Tottenham today, some part of London today, I flicked on the news and it just said, oh, there's been a terrorist incident, such and such, and they thought they'd lost the suspect, but then he turned himself in at the police station. And I was on the road and that's all I heard, but it was interesting given that you'd said, if this kind of brazen, you can't touch us, overt atrocity is going on, and you throw in some false flags, which a lot of people feel that Je suis Hebdo was, and certainly Sandy Hook, but even if you keep it localised, a lot of the Glasgow bus and everything, it seems to be that the ante is going up. And
Right.
so you phrased it something like, it's sometimes a hint of a spectacular in the pipeline, or just like little warnings to those that have ears to hear. Yeah, we're here, and you better keep one eye, because something big's gonna, so on. Can you elaborate on that?
It's done as mental control. This stuff is to inflict fear onto us.
Mm-hmm.
It goes into the media, it goes into all this stuff, and it keeps us at a constant level of fear. It's mind control.
Yeah, if we succumb to that, yeah. Certainly.
Right, what's going on in that section where this ritual stuff's going on, all that energy is being used for the other things, like the manipulation and everything else. It's all going into other stuff. There's a bigger thing going on.
Okay, yeah. Okay, agreed. So, what I'd like to ask you as well is if you can talk, because are you talking mostly from research? I would like to know what you can say from personal experience. Tell me how much of what you know is from years of research and how much of what you know is from personal experience, if you don't mind.
A lot of things I know is from personal experience. Well, 75% of what I'm talking about is personal.
That's really whatever you feel happy enough. That's powerful, because otherwise we can all be accused of going on YouTube, as David Cameron would try and write us off as conspiracy theorists, which is the way he tried to, when people were coming forward just on child sexual abuse, organised child sexual abuse, children from children's homes, paedophile rings, even that was attempted to be written off as, a load of conspiracy theorists. So... Yeah,
I mean, that's a thing too. The media plays it as that, and they say, oh, we're all crazy.
So even taking it a level higher, it is good for people to research, and we can learn vast amounts. But what's really powerful as well is to hear firsthand, because I think this was one of the things that made a profound difference. Because Gabriel and Lisa spoke, it was to me it was a watershed, because it was their truth and personal experience coming out of their mouths, and so that any amount of theory about child sexual abuse or ritual sexual abuse was on a totally different level to seeing two little human beings saying this is what's been happening. So if you, to the extent that you're comfortable, can you share some of your personal, how you've come to be knowledgeable in this field?
I grew up in the town of Andover. The town of Andover is a place where the Phillips Academy is. Phillips Academy is where George Bush and a lot of Skull and Bones went to school. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't actually go to that school, but I had a girlfriend who did, and I have personally witnessed rituals at the Phillips Academy.
Can you just slow down a little bit and talk to us about that? Can you talk to us about what you witnessed without being don't be gratuitously, I don't even think you would be gratuitously graphic, But given the nature of the seriousness of what the children have said is going on in Hampstead and surrounds, can you give us some detail of what you've witnessed firsthand in terms of ritual occultish abuse?
I personally have never seen anybody been sacrificed,
Okay.
but I know by being around people that talked about it, and I've seen the tools that have been used to do these sacrifices.
Okay.
And I was told why sacrifices happen.
Okay, okay. So just to bring it back, and I'm not discounting that at all, but just can you tell us what you personally, not what you've researched or what you've heard from credible witnesses, can you tell us what if any, your personal experiences with Satanism, which you're saying is separate and not necessarily, but can you tell us any of your personal experience around ritual abuse and how you came to be a Satanist, as you call yourself, a reverend of a Satanist church?
Okay, how I became a reverend really didn't have much to do with this. I've had older friends, brothers and things like that taught me of the religion. I've learned myself from the religion, lots of meditation. Inside of my home where I used to live, there were shadow people, and these shadow people used to scare me. So what I decided to do one day was to do some rituals to bring myself to connect with them.
What age were you?
And during these rituals...
What age were you, approximately? When you decided to do some rituals to deal with presences in your home, approximately what age were you?
I must have been 10 or 11.
And where did you learn? Were you raised in a home, a Satanist home? Were your parents? Were you raised born into that church? Raised in it?
My parents, we never went to church. My parents never really had any religious preferences. Okay. But for some reason, I have always felt this connection.
So at 10, you don't consciously know where you knew to do some occult rituals to deal with a dark presence or an unwelcomed or uninvited presence. So you just kind of spontaneously gravitated towards doing some rituals.
Yeah.
And can you describe? Because sometimes it's the air we breathe, and we don't realise that it's perhaps not normal to practice occult arts at the age of 10 to deal with a problem. That's not a normal default for most 10-year-olds. So I was just trying to see if you could identify where you internalised that was a solution or a way forward.
Well, I was into horror movies, to be honest with you, and heavy metal music, even at 10 years old.
Huge part.
And that kind of the trigger. Okay. And from there, I devised my own rituals. Okay. And these rituals just came to me. I can't be specific on where they came from. I just knew how to do them.
Okay.
I set up a bowl on my bureau. I had candles. I had different things. I focused, and I communicated with this entity that was in my home.
Okay. Okay.
And ever since then, I, grew and grew with my abilities.
Okay. And so, given that you say that we shouldn't label all Satanists as abusive or child murdering, raping, sacrificing, blood drinking cannibals, so you were saying that not all Satanists practice those atrocities, and
no.
Right. So we got it that you felt like you spontaneously gravitated towards occult solutions, and I would agree that I believe that it was we've been manipulated towards this, and media has been a huge part of that, and so the movies, the television, books, we can be managed as a race and guided towards thinking the occult, occult practices is a normal go-to solution. So take us from doing rituals and interacting with dark spirits or presences, take us from there to being the reverend of a. Is it an online church? What is your form of practice?
We have rituals. We get together in person. We're recognized by the United States government as a church.
Okay.
And I'm an actual ordained reverend and a doctor of divinity.
And how many of a congregation would you be?
In my area here, we have probably about 50, but worldwide we have thousands.
Okay, so would you be the head of that worldwide, or your local? So you're the head of a worldwide satanic church that doesn't practice cannibalism, sodomy, sodomizing, sacrifice, murder, and torture and rape and corruption and cover-up.
We don't like any of that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're against all that.
So what are you for? What are your rituals about? What you're worshipping Lucifer, or do you call him Satan, or Lucifer? What do you call him or her?
Personally, I recognize Satan. Well, first you got to realize the name Satan in itself is not an actual name. It's a noun, which is defined as the adversary, which is a title that could be given to any being. So if you wish to call Lucifer Satan, that could fit. But I personally view Satan as more of a female energy named Tiamat. Tiamat is the first representation of chaos energy. And you can read about her in Enuma Elish. And what happens to her, she's the creator goddess. And she was the first, the dragon and all that thing, those things. And another god decided that he wanted to kill her children. And she didn't like that. So she waged war on this god. She became his adversary. And this god went against her and sent out his son named Marduk. And Marduk supposedly slayed the dragon Tiamat and made the heavens and the earth and all that stuff out of her blood and flesh. And I will worship this dragon as an energy form, the mother. I don't recognize this Marduk character, which I believe further down the line became other gods that people recognize now. And there's a lot of people who are sacrificing babies to this god, Marduk, which is also the name Baal and Moloch.
Yeah.
And he's also, he goes by many names. He has 50 names.
Okay. All right. So, and what makes you think that this is going on in Hampstead?
After research that I was doing myself, and knowing personally how the occult works and different branches of the occult and this the Marduk cults and how they operate, I put two and two together, and I realized that there is a big, in my opinion, a government cover-up going on in that section, and there's a lot of different cover-ups and utilizing the media. It's all connected, and I realized that those cults are connected to the bigger cults of the Marduk worshippers. And that is really what I believe, honestly, is going on.
Okay.
And these cults they provide babies because they go to foreign countries and things like that as for aid relief.
Yeah.
So supposed to feed and you give aid to people who are poor, and they probably steal the babies, bring them in, and then use them for sacrifices.
Yeah, I just want to give a heads up at this point. There are many forums that are centralising information and gathering evidence to very high professional standard, and I would just want to give a heads up to the Hampstead Research blog, because professionals worldwide are researching and analysing, so that, for instance, you mentioned earlier about tunnels, and there's evidence up there of underground sewage, and so on and so forth. There's very recent camera footage taken of when these videos went online, naming locations, underground passageways, secret rooms, very detailed evidence of several locations where this abuse was going on. That was backed up, and there's also film being taken of spontaneous work going on to cover these things up quickly. there was no planning permission sign saying, you know, refurbishment work is being undertaken at, say for instance, the swimming pool or McDonald's or the church or the school. There was no, you know, no forewarning, no planning permission applied for, just skips, building firms, bricking up, you know, major refurbs, all and documented. So every time, if you check almost every detail of the children's testimony, and this has been done and is being done, every single detail, corroborated, in many cases covered up. But if anybody who is looking for the truth, it's almost jumping out, it's glaring, it's overwhelming. And the shocking thing is that thus far the establishment has managed to say, oh no, it's all a hoax, it's rubbish, and it's and that's it, finished. The satanic cult that wasn't. But encouragingly, the public is possibly from the Jimmy Savile thing. The public is saying, you know, once shame on you, but twice shame on me. The public is not so gullible this time and not so willing to avert their eyes. We're going to take a music break. We're just going to regroup a little bit. I'm going to read some questions that are coming in, and then we'll pick it up. So we'll just take a, is that okay? Are we okay to put, we're going to take like a 3-minute music break, and I'm going to get the questions and we'll take it on from there. Thanks.
Sounds good.
If I name them, I'm leaving some out, but certainly America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe, just literally international support at a phenomenal level. And not just support like, oh yeah, that's a shame. I mean tangible, like what can we do kind of support. You know, and everybody doing, the other thing that's been very powerful is nobody's a leader in fixing this. It's a case of, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? It literally feels like if we as a society or a group or individuals or a nation, if we let this one slide, it's almost like we'll have missed the opportunity of probably our lifetimes to make a difference with this. If we don't do something now, if we ever needed proof, there could not be more overwhelming and mounting and verifiable proof. And if for every human being that turns around, it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. So I'll read. This is from Ella and Abraham. They are saying, we feel that this. They are, for those that don't know, they are in enforced exile, as is Sabine McNeill. What happened was, it was heading the way that predictably these things do without media attention or online attention, which was the children were taken, the testimonies were retracted and covered up. Somebody was set up to be framed, the mother was undermined, the BBC did a hatchet job embedding, and so did the Daily Mail and another establishment newspaper. It was all set to go, A, B, C, D, done, covered up, intimidated, except for this time was different, and this time it went public. But the fallout, which was the worst thing, of course, is A, that Gabriel and Lisa and at least 18 other children have suffered horrendously for years, allegedly. The second worst thing is that having disclosed, which felt like, you know, they were told they would be killed if they ever told, so they risked life and limb to tell the truth, and then feeling that they were home and dry, that wow, we didn't die, we told, we're safe, they were then betrayed again, which was that they were recaptured, if you like. So clearly the worst thing is that they are in care and have been since September. And then you add to that Ella had 9 policemen without a warrant, without authority, legally, jurisdiction-wise, and so on. All sorts of laws were broken. Come to her home and threatened to break the door in, and behave in a very... They were filmed. This is all documented. And just fortuitously, Ella's barrister happened to be in the home, preparing for the next step to stop this wave of cover-up that was just shocking and ongoing. But the truth is, Ella had to flee, and only by the grace of God did she manage to leave the country to carry on raising awareness and fighting for her children from a safe distance, or she would have been another Melanie Shaw in prison, being traumatised daily and ongoingly, disabled, so that she could not effectively fight for her children. Also, you know, Abraham, who facilitated and discerned that the children were very clearly, Ella was not familiar with, or it was not in her frame of reference, child sexual abuse at such a profound and torturous level. Abraham discerned it and had more experience, and so he did not expect, having met Ella for a few months and the children for a few months, and then seen something and then embraced full on and faced it, did not expect either to be forcibly relocated out of country under threat of being framed and probably jailed. And then also Sabine, who's a Mackenzie friend amongst other things. She's also a mathematician, a web designer, you know, a European legal activist, long time, very respected. Did not expect either to be forcibly exiled under threat of you know, probable jailing on a trumped up charge. So these are all serious things. So just from exile, enforced exile under threat of being disabled by being imprisoned, Abe and Ella are still managing to keep this campaign going and also keep themselves safe. So we appreciate that. So they say, we feel that this death cult in Hampstead is Illuminati. And like Tim Vita, we feel that the Satanism is merely a strategy or another source of useful traditions. Is useful the right word? Another source of ritual traditions, i.e. the rite of sodomy, sex magic, the rite of blood drinking, the rite of cannibalism. When I say rite, R-I-T-E. Symbolism, numerology. The cult kidnapped the children on 9/11, and anybody that's done any research into the Illuminati, if you want to call it that, numerology is hugely important. And that remind me to talk about Freemasonry tying in there as well. So, sometimes tying in, amongst other acts. What other ancient occult or esoteric mystery religious traditions employed by this cult are used by established Illuminati cults that you or other listeners are aware of? This is in order to ascertain whether or not this is an Illuminati cult or not. I think we're all clear that it's a cult. I think we're all clear that there's not just child sexual abuse, murder, rape, torture going on, but there's ritual aspects to it. There's strategic days, strategic times. So I'll just say, I'll tune that down again just by reiterating. What other ancient, occult, or esoteric mystery religious traditions employed by this cult are used by established Illuminati cults that you or other listeners are aware of?
Okay, as we've already discussed this, but the Marduk cults, it comes from Babylon. Later on, it was the Hebrew people. They converted it, and some people, not all of them, some people decided to continue with the Babylonian rites and sacrifice babies. This continues today.
Okay.
People call it the Illuminati, but it has many names. Call it what you will. There is real cults that do these things, and yeah, this is really going on. But this comes from the Babylonian practices.
Okay. So of the Satanist traditions or the Illuminati cults, I'm just interested to know what percentage of them do you say are at the far dark end, which is incorporating ritual abuse, cannibalism, blood drinking, child sacrificing, sodomizing, torturing. What percentage of satanic or ritual cults, functioning ritual cults, what percentage of them would you estimate are practicing this level of atrocity?
People who would, first off, many Satanists wouldn't even engage in this stuff, but the people who would, the sick people, there probably wouldn't even be a number of into 100 or even less. These bigger rituals are done by different people from different sects of different religions. It's not really Satanism. It's just something totally different. I can understand why people think it's Satanism, because we're all taught Satan's evil and it's about killing babies, but this is what we're taught purposely. We're told this. And they're using this as a cover so that they can do what they're doing.
Okay, so because you're saying not all Satanists or not all cults are practicing this level of depraved atrocity. So what percentage of functioning cults would you estimate are engaging in this level of horror? Horror is not even strong enough. Words can't encapsulate.
I know.
So would you say for instance, if you estimate there may be, say, 3 or 5 or 6 major paedophile rings, cults functioning in England. Let's say there's 6. Of those 6, which would you say are functioning at the absolute darkest end of the spectrum, as appears to be the case in Hampstead? Because you're saying it's not all, it's only the very... What percentage of...
Right. What kind of... How many actual cults are actually doing this kind of thing?
Yeah, if you're familiar with Satanism and ritual and cult practices, but you say it's only a few, like you said, the Mardukes and so on, it's only a few that practice that darkest of the dark rituals.
Right.
So would you say... What percentage?
How many people together?
Just a percentage. If there were 10 rings operating in England, how many would you estimate were practicing at this level of depravity?
Not many. If there's, I know another satanic group that's in England called the Rational Church of Satan.
Okay, good. Tell us about
that. They're in England, and they're atheists, and they believe in evolution through the mind and all that other stuff.
Okay.
They don't believe in sacrifice at all. So those people will not be involved in that. The people,
what
like I said, would be involved in that.
Where are they operating? What do you know about that group and where are they operating? Or if you want to share that, you don't have to. Okay, so you're just talking about a satanic group operating in England that doesn't practice those things. Is that what you're saying?
They don't do that. So
okay.
All right. You want to know the ones that do?
Alright, so would you my understanding is that you feel very strongly that Hampstead is a cult operating in the depths of depravity.
Yes, it is.
Okay, alright, let's see. So, alright, we'll go on to the next question and we'll come back to that if we need to. So
I just don't believe that they're Satanists.
Pardon?
I just don't believe that those people are Satanists that are killing those babies.
Yeah.
I believe they're cultists.
Yeah, and which seems to be what Abraham and Ella are saying, is that's just a distraction compared to what they're doing and what needs to happen to stop them doing that and to get the children free.
Right.
Okay, so another question from Hampstead Research Regular. Have you ever heard or come across the Order of Nine Angels?
Yes, I've had come across them. I don't get along with them very well.
Okay.
They're some pretty extreme, sick people.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, they believe in the sinister path. It's more aligned with what I would call reverse Christianity, or what you may consider like devil worship. They supposedly do engage in human sacrifice. They do believe in acts of terror. And supposedly they have gone on missions and killed people.
Okay.
And this is what they say. I have had many arguments with these people online. They threaten my family.
Okay.
They threaten to kill me.
Okay.
And it's continuous. Those people are sick.
Okay. And
they have problems.
Would you say they have an international church? Where do you think they're most... Where are they based? Are they based
Europe,
in America?
They're in England.
Oh, in England. Wow. That's good for us to know. So, anything else you can say about that? Because this is news to me and I've done a lot of research. So, anything else? You believe they're based in England, you've had personal death threats, and you believe they're fully practicing in the dark, the darkest of dark.
They say it right out in the public that they commit human sacrifices.
Okay.
They say it.
Okay.
They call it culling.
Culling. Oh, dear God.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I want to ask. I'm going to, and I have personal experience too, but I haven't come across that. So you've had personal death threats from them. You believe them to be. Would you know what part of England? Would you even? Could it be possible that that is the particular cult that's operating in Hampstead?
No, these people are different. I want to say these people are more militant. They would just they would sacrifice adults, and they would rather go around with guns and shoot people rather than hide in the darkness. Okay. That's what they believe. They believe bringing terror into this world would bring their version of Satan into this world.
Okay. Okay. Good. I want to ask just the Freemason thing again. I don't want to demonize any particular group exclusively because then we're missing the point. But how much of this, in your opinion, is connected? Are you can I ask? I know technically you're not allowed to answer me honestly if you're a Freemason, because the very nature of it is secrecy. But can you talk a little bit about the Freemason overlap with this? A lot. For instance, everybody in every position of influence and power in the establishment, as we call it in England, is a Freemason, and a lot of Freemasons are the same as a lot of Catholics, a lot of anybody in a people group at the entrance levels. They may spend a whole lifetime thinking nothing's wrong. I go to mass. We do communion, we do this, we do that, everything's grand, don't know anything. Certainly there's also Freemasons, they do fundraising, they do good works, they do networking for business. And it's only when you get to the upper echelons, and this can be the same in the police force, in any field of professionalism, what we call the establishment, when you get to a certain level...
Anyway, they're all entwined.
Pardon? So,
a lot of police officers are Masons also. What? They're all connected.
What are?
You have the Freemasons are connected with the police station most of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of police,
Hugely. Something we've been encouraged in this case and with Hampstead Research is that there seems to be a tangible shift in the police actually breaking ranks and actually saying, no, enough's enough. No, I'm willing to lose my pension or risk my pension. I'm willing to miss a promotion. I'm willing to, stick my neck on the line. This isn't okay with me. They're definitely out on the streets and interacting. There definitely seems to be something that's unraveling. The judiciary and the government seems much harder nut to crack, but the police seem to be awakening. I would vent. Not all of them, but there does seem to be a huge shift. Would you concur? And so
I agree.
Anything else about Freemasonry you can shed on that?
I mean, what would you like to know about Freemasonry? I mean,
I know a lot about it. But it's a catch-22 because if I say to you, are you a 33rd degree or a higher Freemason, and was that parallel with your path to Satanism?
I'm not old enough to be one.
Yeah, but also the nature of Freemasonry is its secret, so maybe we're flogging a dead horse there, but that's definitely worth something.
My uncles are Freemasons.
Yeah, okay. Alright, so for anybody new to all this, I found myself coming through an area where the children are possibly in foster care. And so, tangibly, I just shouted as I drove through that place where I believe the children to be in legal captivity, pseudo-legal,
Right.
and I just shouted at the forces of evil and darkness to let my people go. And I literally was shouting in my car, "You take your hands off Gabriel and Lisa, you release them now in Jesus' name, you set those children free, you cannot keep them captive anymore, social services, whatever. I was speaking to the demons and the powers of darkness and the bodies that have been holding them and commanding them to release the children. Now, you know, I try and do something tangible every day. So as much as us educating ourselves is good, I want to keep bringing it back. How can this impact getting the children free? So I'm just
Right.
let's note to yourself as well. I'm
We
going to read the
need
next
to do-
question. Okay.
We need to use. Alright, go ahead.
Speak a little louder.
Sorry about that. But I was going to say, what we need to do is take our knowledge and find physical evidence. The physical evidence is what we need.
The evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is overwhelming. I don't know, you have been keeping up with it lately. The evidence to any right-minded court would be, good God, who's waiting for what? Of course this has been a nightmare. Of course
What I'm
this
surprised
hasn't been
about
properly...
is how the children now described certain marks on people's bodies.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Yeah.
In the United States, that's grounds for people to be arrested
Yeah.
and investigated further.
Yeah.
I am really curious why this hasn't happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know why.
Yeah,
But,
even at the airport, for instance, I went through and I have a metal clip in my hair. That was grounds straight away for me to be body x-rayed.
Yeah.
Straight away.
Yeah.
That's just because I had a clip in my head and it went beep when I walked through. If you're suspected
Mm-hmm.
of carrying drugs, you could be strip searched.
Yeah.
You know, certainly Michael Jackson was he
Right.
was told
It was,
or
yeah.
ordered.
Photo.
You know, and this has been
Yeah.
offered right from the get-go. There are professional medical people. It will be done with the utmost dignity, the utmost, you know, nobody's trying to humiliate anybody and strip
Yeah.
them. This is not a lynch
Yeah.
mob. If I was accused of doing horrendous things to children and somebody said she's
Right.
got a piercing, a tattoo and a birthmark,
Right.
believe you me, with an accompanying, say, person, I would be straight down, please do an exam, I want to clear my name. So there have
Right.
been...
These people do that. So obviously there's something there. There really is. That's evidence.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think most of the alleged abusers have not been cited, and
Right.
none have presented themselves to clear their name. So anyway, I'm going to move on to the next question because we're right. So this is from Bonds. Could this cult operate through church schools, and if so, how? What means would they use to communicate between cult compartments? So if we say that church schools are the nucleus, how does that work?
How they all connect? I mean, it's obvious. They're using the church itself over there. That's the occult center.
Yeah, that's
where stuff happens.
Okay.
They use that church. They use the school and stuff, obviously, for the children, and that's the front to get the children there.
Yeah.
And that's how those two are connected.
Yeah.
They need to have the children, but they're connected, to church.
Yeah. And that's a step that needs the collusion of not just teachers and caretakers but parents. And we have had parents come forward and say that they've removed their children from the school because when they wouldn't go along with after-school activities or that they started to sense things that weren't okay, it was made very clear to them, move on, move out. If you're not with us,
A parent would sense that something's not right.
Yeah.
You feel something's not right, you take your child right out of that situation.
Yeah. Well, there's been more than one parent from the same schools. So, okay. Yeah, we're going to take a music break and regroup. We do have questions coming in. So,
Cool.
we're going to take a music break and regroup. And we're just going to go with this as long as we can for this session. And if we need to come back with a follow-up session, we'll do that in a week or so. So we're going to take another music break. Thanks. Primarily and urgently, the release of Gabriel and Lisa, the freedom of movement and apology to Ella and Abraham and Sabine, and the exposure that this is not a hoax, this is real, this is not an isolated incident of abuse, combined with the mark of Zorro being watched and da-da-da. This is about more. Ella and Abraham are, rather, Gabriel and Lisa are the face of something much bigger. And that's what we believe. There are people in the chat room. Tell me the name of the recap that for me again. Sorry, can you tell me the name of the couple of people in the chat room? ATM Nicholson, aka Jake, I believe, saying, let's have that comment again.
That he doesn't believe in that Satanists or real occultists kill, and that the cases have been disproved in the 1980s.
Okay, well, I would dispute that strongly. There have been cover-ups, certainly, and not only cover-ups, but the whole false memory syndrome was created, just as many psychiatric conditions are created to manage, you know, for instance, like post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of mental illnesses are actually mental injuries, valid mental injuries. Post-traumatic, a lot of symptoms of children brutalized like this in adulthood. A common one is dissociation. One of the arguments was, this can't be real, because why would the children be talking so calmly and so fluently and so lucidly about such horrors? And that was something I thought I had effectively explained to the BBC Melanie Abbott, because she was not familiar with dissociation, and it's a coping mechanism of the human mind. If something is unbearable beyond the human ability to bear, the mind splits to put it somewhere in order to survive.
And if those things are happening constantly, it becomes normal. So they're going to talk about it as it's a normal activity.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's not, but that's how they're going to talk about it.
Okay.
So that's why people talk so calmly.
Okay. And
After
for me, the pathos, one of the most painful moments, not just hearing the children's testimony and knowing that they were speaking truth, but one of the most torturous parts of this whole unfolding was what I would call the enforced retraction of Gabriel, where he was left unsupervised, without a safe adult, without anybody in the room, late at night in a police station, and was not conforming to the party line of retraction, and superbly analysed by a professional forensic linguistic analyst who gives court testimony and so on. And the sad thing is that on a technicality that's trying to be, it was so good and so convincing that this was a forced retraction, that now on a technicality they're trying to say that's not admissible in court, because technically the tapes didn't belong to Ella. They had transferred ownership to Barnett or whoever, so therefore not admissible. So it's despicable. That evidence was so well analysed that they're attempting to make it inadmissible. But the agony was, the policeman Steve left the room, I believe because he was bottling it in brutalising these children into lies, and a bit of his humanity got a conscience, in my opinion, and he left the room. That little boy was left at something like 11:30 at night in an interview room with no other person there, with the tape still running, and he whimpered. He whimpered, and he whimpered like a betrayed, wounded. Nobody can say that he was not dissociated at that time. That was the most profound despair, and I couldn't even listen to the enforced retraction of Elisa for weeks after that because I was so devastated. But I'll just move on to the next question because we're going to go for about another 10 minutes for this session, and I really appreciate your time. So this is, how's cash laundered? No, let me just go back a bit. Is there any significance in the sweets the children were being given? The children talked about being given sweets as payment. Sometimes they were talked about getting money, but they were also being rewarded, as they say, for, you know, after being severely abused, whether drugged or whether having developed enough dissociation to be brutalised without drugs. But they talked fairly consistently about being given sweets as rewards. Do you have any opinion on that?
That's just a perverted adult trying to say, here, you know, you did something good or whatever, here you go.
So part of trauma bonding, so here's the horrible thing, now here's a reward.
Yeah.
It crosses my mind, are the sweets, are the children being drugged as well? Is that part of the arsenal of weaponry?
Maybe there's drugs in the sweets.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'd be
Possibly.
interesting to analyse them if that was possible. Okay, how's cash laundered? And do you think it's possibly through casinos? Because the other part of this is horrible, but this is a whole industry. If what the children are saying is true, it's not just that they're going through this, but it's being filmed and it's being distributed. It includes snuff.
Right.
It includes, you know, snuff movies are where people die and it's filmed, and there's a sick following and a very high cash return on that. And there's some fabulous evidence on Hampstead research on that very subject.
Now, have they linked these videos to...
But if this is an international, not just a paedophile ritual abuse ring, but also an industry of distributing snuff movies and the darkest of dark child pornography, how would you say the money's laundered? And this person is asking, do you think it's laundered through casinos?
Well, I think it's how it's all put together and stuff is through religion. It's done through the churches and things like that. Because churches don't have to pay taxes. Churches have a lot of leniency. The mafia used to launder money through the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and the Vatican.
So I think it's the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, that and their charities, like the Red Cross and things of that nature.
Huge thing in
Both
England.
of them.
Huge thing people need to switch on to. Because there is quite a lot of evidence to indicate that Childline, for instance, far from being this amazing, altruistic, you know, of course we've got to, you know, make it easy for children to tell, but actually there's quite a lot of evidence indicating that the very opposite is true, that the paedophile ring, for instance, the Westminster one, connected with the Elm Guest House and Dolphin Square and, you know, Kincora in Belfast and North Wales Children's Homes and Manchester, to name just a few. Oh God, I lost my train of thought.
Right, chariots laundering the
Oh,
money.
right. Yeah, so there was danger of that coming out back in the 80s. And that was why there was the distraction of the Cash for Questions Cook report. And there was a way, it was diverted, it was averted back then, it came very close to the wind. And a lot of people believe that Childline was actually to be the first port of call for any kids that might disclose, despite having been drugged, traumatised, shamed, whatever, but there were some that were spilling. So far from, now this is an allegation, far from Childline being a good thing, it was actually to filter out who's speaking. How can we isolate them, intimidate them, silence them, avert, you know, lose their testimony or somehow the paperwork, whatever. So it's interesting that traditionally, going back to the 40s, the source, supply and demand, was either children's homes in England or military families' children. Now it's gone a bit more public. Now it's schools, so church schools. And that seems to be, and also rather than the mafia and it being straightforward, the mafia and being laundered through casinos or drugs and prostitution. Now we're talking charities that a lot of people think are bona fide, and so it's interesting. It's becoming...
people outside of the cult.
The internet is a huge resource. I've just had an idea talking and asking that question out loud. There's a news agency called Xara News. They're on Fleet Street and they're well funded, but they have a website and there's a Dropbox for confidential disclosures. Now in this case it's for survivors that might never have disclosed before. But I'm just going to put it to Jackie and the people running Hampstead Research. If it's hard to stomach, but my attitude is, if we just rescue children, there's millions worldwide. The most effective thing to do is to encourage the small percentage of people committing these atrocities to stop. That's more powerful than rescuing their hundreds of victims, thousands, millions of victims. So I would say that one possibility is, just as Xara News has a confidential place on their website that survivors can access, perhaps we should set that up for abusers. That this is a place for you to disclose confidentially at your own pace, and to the best of our ability we will judge you so much. Obviously they will need to be held accountable. You can't just do that level of horror and then say, okay, right, I'm out, don't tell anybody. We're not in the business of covering up, but nor are we're not a lynch mob either. And if it's going to help free the children, of course we will empower the abusers to stop it. First of all, tell the truth, and secondly, reach out. So that's something...
That's what my church does. We do that with drug addicts. My church, we act as a support system to local drug addicts, and we're there for people who wish to come out of addiction and things like that. So
this is a tall
always
order.
there to listen. Listen is very important.
Yeah, helping an addict recover. We're talking a whole new paradigm to actually set up a safe space for ritual murderers, sodomists, abusers, rapists, torturers, movie makers, liars, demonically possessed. If we're saying we'll set up a safe space for them to disclose and look at how do they get out, and I can't speak for Hampstead Research because nobody is the boss. There is no hierarchy. Okay, so I'm going to wind up. I'm just going to see if there's any more bottom line questions, and clearly there's enough interest in this that we'll come back to this. Right, there seems to be a strong link with Hampstead and church bells. What might this be about? Anything on that?
Church bells?
I haven't seen that link, but somebody obviously has seen a link with the church bells. So
I was reading that. Oh, about the church.
Somebody just saying that there seems to be a link in the Hampstead, because there's a lot of it's ritual and it's tied in with numerology and dates, and it's all very orchestrated, which is a MO of the Illuminati and so on. So I hadn't seen the connection with church bells. Had you?
Church bells, yes. That makes a lot of sense actually, because sound waves and create vibrations, and it's all to do with frequencies. I use them myself in rituals.
Okay.
And just finished a CD actually just for that purpose.
Okay.
The bells, they transmit the frequencies and the vibrational tones.
Okay.
To make things resonate at a certain level. All things are energy. We're energy. So it makes sense.
When mind control as a program first started with a vengeance after World War II, it was very crude, and trauma-based mind control was mostly done by this kind of ritual abuse and torture.
Right.
It has been refined, and the same amount of trauma and dissociation can be created now with sound waves and electromagnetic waves. There's also technology in place where you can change the way you can go and park and make waves emit for 6 weeks, say for instance in a Labour stronghold, and everybody will vote Tory and nobody will understand why. So, okay, I got that. So the church bells could be very relevant. And one last, the mind control, we will do the next show on that, because that's a huge subject, but absolutely it's part of it.
Yeah.
And I was very alarmed straight away when I saw that the children had counselling at the Tavistock Centre. Well, to anybody that studies mind control, that is a linchpin and always has been for mind control.
Yeah.
Okay, well listen, we've covered most of the questions. We've had a very active chat room. We'll have stats on the listenership at this crazy hour, almost 3 in the morning, 2:35. I want to thank you for your input. I hope, well, I know there's been no abuse and there's no point scoring. I have to reiterate for myself, without putting anybody else down, that for me this is demon possession, this is diabolical, and it's not going to just be clever networking and conscious eating and meditating. Those things are all great, but this is the strongest form of spiritual warfare that I've observed. I've heard of, for instance, in countries where voodoo and black magic is openly practiced, so you will see demonic manifestations openly manifesting, like in Haiti or parts of Africa, places where the occult is very overtly practiced. But in England and in Europe, this is the most overt manifestation of demons I've seen, and that's not to insult you. And to me, it's not against flesh and blood we wrestle, it's against powers and principalities and rulers of this present darkness and spiritual wickedness in high places, and we need to absolutely overcome this with spiritual powers, not just coming together and brainstorming and networking and discussing. So, anything else I need to add? Any last? Thank you. This has been long, and this shows the level of interest and the level of complexity. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in, everybody that sent questions. I pray I've done justice for this first time, and I absolutely believe I was meant to make this diversion, and I pray with all my heart and believe with all my heart that this will forward dramatically Gabriel and Lisa being returned to their mum, and whichever setup she chooses to make the space for them, whether it's her mum and partner in one country or whether it's her mum and family back in Russia, it's the mother's. The mother was not ever in a custody battle. That's a total lie. So my first prayer is the children are returned to their mum, and that the people that have been exiled and framed, that's lifted. So the first thing is the truth, but I do feel it's urgent and we need to get the children free, and soon. So thank you. Do you want to add anything before we close up this session?
No, I think it covered a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy. I just want to say a big thank you again to Happenstance Radio, which is another spontaneous, listen, hey, this platform's available, I want to do what I can. And so many have done that. And from the smallest thing people do, whether it's writing a letter, praying, sending an email, or talking to someone, or whether it's big guns professionals coming in with their expertise at no charge, whatever it is, it makes a difference. So thank you, and God bless, and God bless the children and let them be free. Thank you. Angie, Hampstead Research.